Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Darkest Dungeon, a game that was developed and published by Red Hook Studios and released in 2016 on Windows, OS X, Linux, PS4, PS Vita, iOS, Xbox One, and the Switch.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
All right, so Darkest Dungeon is, at this point, it's a pretty old game. And one that we completely didn't talk about or even talk about talking about for a long time, which is perfect for Fanbruary. Welcome to Fanbruary. Realize we're very late in the month to be starting it. This will be a farch situation. But you will see why, I assume, in the coming hour as we talk about this game. But yeah, this game was suggested by two members of our Discord community, and I would say at this point it's like the 15th, so like a little too late. I'm sorry if you only listen to the podcast and didn't heed our warnings in the previous episodes, but submissions are closed for the time being. But yeah, always exciting to do Fanbruary. But Darkest Dungeon, the game, is an RPG. Full stop. There are elements. I've heard people compare it to a roguelike, which I can see. I see where they're coming from with it. But I think that it's weird in that way, and I don't know if we want to talk about just genre classification, but I think that the primary thing that lends itself to that comparison is the fact that your characters will die and then have to be replaced as part of a larger campaign.
Right. And I've also heard it called a dungeon crawler.
Right.
Which it also resembles. Is this the hardest it's ever been for you not to just be like, Darkest Dungeon is a game that sucks? Because I was
close to that. Yeah,
I was I figured there was a coin flip whether or not you were going to make a joke like that.
Yeah, this game is extremely, the reason that I said it's an RPG full stop and hesitated briefly as if I was going to say additional things, is because the parts of this game that have seared themselves into my brain over the last 2 weeks are the RPG parts, and they're endlessly frustrating to me. So, I would have said that it sucks to me at the beginning of the episode. That would not be untrue to my soul. The only thing that matters here. But I did also want to open with the Fanbruary thing.
Right.
Because after the Valheim incident of last year, I'm hesitant to come out of the gate swinging quite as hard.
Right. So I guess a place to start would be, I feel like this is another one of those games where I'm surprised it was as popular as it was, now having played it. I feel like this made a decently sized splash. It wasn't a phenomenon or anything. But I feel like a lot of people played it at the time, and it seems really niche to me. So I found that kind of surprising. And I have to wonder how much of that success hinges on just the fact that the Crusader character, in the game's art style, kind of looks like the elite knight armor from Dark Souls.
I do know that a number of Dark Souls centric creators and stuff also played this game. I think there's an element of it just being a hard game that I think drew certain people into it through particularly people playing it online and sort of showing it off, because I didn't get super far in the game. I can envision a version of this game that I do find cool. And I feel like that version is what I would see if I was watching somebody who had put like 100 hours into the game or more.
Mm-hmm.
Like that end game state where you feel like you're making important choices where every failure doesn't like immediately end your run. Like that kind of a thing I can see. Like I imagine that I would enjoy a more relaxed version of this game than what we have. But I don't begrudge its difficulty. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I think that kind of thing, like getting to that point and showing it off, is a thing that was popular, and that's why a lot of people sort of dove into it. And I think the promise of reaching that level is what made it as popular as it was. Yeah, I mean, in addition to it just being like, I guess, a good game for some people, I just don't know who those people are.
Right. No, I could see this being an interesting game to watch because it would be tense and dramatic.
Yeah. I will say I did watch this game more than I played it over the last couple of weeks. Because I knew that I wasn't getting anywhere in the game and I wasn't getting there fast. And I didn't have a lot of time to just sink into it. So I was like, we'll see what other people do in the game. And I watched people who were playing it for like the first time, and it seems like they were having the same experience as me, but also having fun. So like, good on them, I guess. Because I was not able to crest that hill.
Yeah, I had some friction with it at the beginning as well. Like, I do think it would benefit the game a lot to have a smoother onboarding process. I don't want, like, I know the game's supposed to be stressful, like that's what it's about. So I don't think all the edges should be sanded off, but like, I don't know. This is the kind of game where like there's like a really short tutorial, and then it might just be that I was being more negligent than I should have been. But there were like multiple mechanics I just completely forgot about that from that short tutorial that made the game harder for me. Like I completely forgot you could run from battles. So I had like a full party wipe at one point that was completely preventable because I forgot you could run. And I forgot that you could like purify the curios. So choosing to open like a treasure chest didn't have to like have like what felt like a 75% chance of like cursing me or something.
Yeah, it felt like, so I was a victim of, I think talking about the difficulty now is probably just valid to just jump into it as the first thing that we really get onto. And because there are a lot of things that like, if they were tutorialized, I somehow missed it. And I felt like I was playing or paying pretty close attention. Like, I don't remember it ever telling me that you could run away from
it might not have. I know it tells you about the curios, and I forgot that. So that
you can use items on the curios.
So I just assumed it said you could run, and I just forgot. But it might not tell you that.
So this game has, I would say, its design ethos is to try and, I guess, make things as like the game wants to force experimentation on the player. And I think a lot of things were sort of done in that vein, but it also has this idea of being sort of unforgiving. I don't know. I would call it unforgiving in the sense that, like, if you come across a curio, right, and you drag an item into the use on the thing and it doesn't do anything, you still lose that item. Like, it uses it up and does nothing for you, which seems particularly harsh, I felt, as a thing. And what it did to me is that, like, I was cool with it early because I would experiment with things. I would try and learn and figure stuff out. But the game is constantly introducing new things, especially in the like new character archetypes. Like there's like, I don't actually know the number, but it's probably like 12 or so different kinds of character that you can get. Mm-hmm. And they all have a whole different set of mechanics and attacks and different things that you have to pay attention to. And the game scales up enough that you don't have the luxury of experimenting anymore. When I stopped playing the game, I had 3 alive characters and $60. Like, I was like, I don't think that I can come back from this.
That's
like,
pretty
I
rough.
could run. Yeah, I could like run the easiest dungeon that is available to me with all level 0 characters, and then I would have to put them all in the sanitarium for a turn and then go back. So this game, like, I didn't click with this game. I don't think that I understood this game. I didn't do very well at it. And I blame the fact that I was open to experimentation at the beginning, which feels like what the game wants you to do. Like, I think it wants you to experiment, figure things out, and then just take your save file and throw it in the trash and start over. Because I felt like I had ruined so many characters at that point or literally lost them to death before I ever got a thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I had a not nearly as bad as that, but like kind of similar experience where I had only lost like maybe 2 characters after like several hours, but then I had like a full party wipe, like the first time I went into like an area that like had a boss fight or something. And I was like, oh man, should I just like start the game over? Like, those are all my best guys. Like, I haven't really been using anyone else, which probably wasn't a wise decision. And I was like, but then this is when I looked up like a tips video, because I was like, this is the kind of game where you go to a tips video. And like, you know, I watched that, and like one of the pieces of advice the guy gave was like, don't worry, like you're gonna party wipe, like stuff like that happens in this game. Don't start over, like push through, like it's totally doable. And like, I played about 12 hours of the game when I stopped, and I don't know how much I agree with that, because like I felt like I was kind of at a point where I was wheel spinning, where like I had a handful of good characters like around level 3 who I was trying to level up a couple of like a second party of characters, and like I kept taking them into dungeons, but like I felt like all the level 1 encounters were boss like on a boss run, and I couldn't take the higher level characters into that dungeon to like help out the lower level characters. So I kept like taking in a party of 4 like level 1 characters and like getting to the boss, and one of them dies. So like I give them a point where like I keep losing one character and like not getting all the rewards, and like so like I'm not completely sliding back, but like it's like really grindy for like no reason. Like, I don't see why you can't use your higher level characters to help level up your lower level ones.
Wait, can you not? I never had a character that was above level 2.
I think there's
and I only got one guy to level 2.
Right. I think there's certain cutoff points. Like, I think like once a character hits level 3, they won't do a level 1 dungeon. And I think I also was reading, like, once they hit level 5, they won't do 3 or below. They'll just, like, they'll be like, that's beneath me. I won't fucking get out of bed for anything less than a level 5 dungeon.
Okay. So you have to individually raise, essentially, one character at a time up to, like, level 5 in order to run a level 5 dungeon.
Well, I mean, you can, if you level up a party of 4 altogether.
Sure. I am existing in a world where having all 4 people leave the dungeon is an impossibility.
Okay.
I think that happened to me once in the in 7 hours of playing.
Okay.
I think I left a dungeon with 4 alive party members one time.
Okay. That's quite the different experience then.
Okay. I also felt the grind, and my thought process that I was like striving for, I was like, this is the thing that will happen in the future, is first of all, eventually you'll be able to recruit people who aren't level 0.
That is
so I had the level 1 upgrade, and so I was getting level 1s as recruits. near the end there. And that was good. That meant that I didn't have to run a dungeon with a full party of level 0s just to get someone up to level 1 so that they could hang with the other people. But I was also thinking, okay, you can get one character who is okay and then use them as a buffer to bring the lower level people through dungeons and get them leveled up, which would speed up the process. But if you can't do that, then it feels just so asinine that this game would just require you to sit and run dungeons for like 70 hours before you could get anywhere, which seems really boring.
And I think that is what the game is. I think, like, how long to beat says this game's like 60 hours long. And I think the majority of that time is like just getting a party of level 6 characters. At least that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, that seems bad. That seems like no fun at all. My biggest problem with the game was like, it feels so core to before anybody says anything, and I'm already too late. I realize that people have already said
We're already in the hole.
We're already in the hole. I understand, like, I fundamentally get that is the point. Like, the game is supposed to be stressful, it's supposed to be difficult, it's Lovecraftian themed because it has these like mechanics of stress and like this hopelessness, this despair. They have a fucking guy who comes in every 5 seconds to tell you how bad everything is. Like, I get that, like, I fully understand, and am saying that this just doesn't work for me in terms of like making the game something I want to engage with. But my biggest issue is the stress mechanic. And it's so core and fundamental to the way that the game works that I understand that, one, it's not an option for that to go away or be changed to something significantly different and keep the core identity of the game. But at the same time, its existence just barred me completely from enjoying myself because every time that you go through a dungeon, everyone who came back has to then go to get stress relief. So then you have to run another dungeon with characters who are not your main character, which, I don't know, for me ended twice in like a full party wipe and then like multiple times where I had to abandon the quest and got basically nothing out of it. And it felt like it was impossible to do anything. So I was just like, I would play the game and then I would pull 4 random people and then crumple them into a ball and put them in the waste paper basket. And then I would run a dungeon with the characters that had already had experience on them. And I could level their weapons and armor and like unlock new skills and upgrade the skills. And they were dealing actual damage to enemies. And then I have to go put them away again. And I told you I ended with 3 alive characters and $60. The last dungeon I ran, I had my party of good people like ready to go, but one of them was just AWOL, and the game didn't warn me that this could happen. Like, he just had a question mark next to his head, and he was unselectable, and he was nowhere in town. So I was like, I either run a dungeon with 3 people, or because I didn't have I didn't have the money to do anything. So it was like, I just had to take what I had, which was run a dungeon with the 4 people who were in the caravan, which is what I did. And they died all instantly because I went through 2 rooms and then a boss killed me that I didn't know was part of the game. And then I was looking at the screen. I was like, I have no money for upgrades. I have 3 characters. I can pull more people out of the caravan to do it again. And I looked at the clock and I said, you know what? I don't ever want to play this game again, and just closed it. And it was because like I just had like characters that were just unavailable, and it was just, I don't know, I just didn't want to continue.
Yeah. No, that definitely sucks for you. But like, I found that kind of like a cool mechanic when it popped up for me. Like the first time I sent a character somewhere and it was just like, they didn't come back. I was like, oh, like that's kind of mysterious. Like I didn't like, I mean, it ends up just being like another random thing that can fuck you.
Yeah.
In the end. So I don't like that. But like in the moment I was like, oh, like, is this going to play into like the eldritch horror thing? Is he going to have like stumbled into somewhere and gained some kind of like weird ability because he went AWOL, or like, I don't know. I thought it could have been something cool and intrigued me when it happened initially. But I had like a full roster of people to pick from at that point, so...
Yeah. It feels like the game could have implemented some fail-safes to prevent those things from happening. Like, if I had 7 people...
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part is, I just didn't know what it was, right? Like, I didn't know what the mechanic was. I assumed that he was going to be available to me. I actually had a... one, like the town event, like the town crier thing was like, I got a free upgrade to one of my buildings, and I could have used it to increase my caravan or like my roster, whatever it was that I needed to actually have playable characters to run with. And I had just used it on something else because I just assumed that the dude was going to be available.
Right.
And so that sealed my fate, because then I was out of resources completely and there was nothing I could do. Yeah, I don't know. I would agree with you. I think it would have been cool if it was tied in that way, but it's just nothing. There's not even like an animation or a line of dialogue to go with it. They just vanish and you don't know where they are. So it just is bullshit and you lose.
That's rough, buddy. God, I feel like I had something to say off of the back of that, but completely forget what it was now.
Is it another random thing that could just show up and end you? Because that's what I was going to build off of.
I mean, yeah, we can talk about that, because that's like my biggest complaint with the game. Is a lot of games use RNG and can kind of feel like you get fucked by like random dice rolls, but like under the hood, like they're actually pretty well balanced and like totally fair. This game, I feel like, tilts into the like the other end of it, where I think the dice rolls are just bullshit too often. Because like you can like get critical hit by an enemy and do like 75% of their HP and drop them to 0, which puts them on death's door, which means like the next hit has like a, I don't know, like 50% chance to just kill them or whatever.
It's different for every character,
right,
I think.
Okay, yeah. Depending on their
it's like a
stats,
stat.
I guess. Yeah. And then the next enemy can target them and kill them immediately. So like you've just taken like 2 hits in a row and die. And there's nothing that you could have done about it. I mean, just the fact that that sort of thing is possible seems wrong. Like, it's supposed to be stressful, and I feel like the randomness is supposed to add to that, right? You never know what's going to happen. But I feel like you shouldn't just be able to like just lose a character to no fault of your own like that.
Well, I think so. The Death's Door mechanic is like a big sticking point for me, because it feels like the one thing that is in the player's favor. Like when your character hits 0 HP, they don't just fall over and die. You have an opportunity to like rescue them, and nothing can kill them when they have any HP at all, which makes the Plague Doctor weirdly very good, because you can just, whenever somebody's on death door, just heal them for 1, and then they're invincible on their to the next hit, essentially. Which I felt was like, which kept parties alive that wouldn't have otherwise. But I do agree that it does feel like it does. The AI seems like very smart in this game. I never had a Vestal. I had one Vestal come back ever. Like they would kill the healer immediately every time. Like I would frontline, I would mark my own people. I would do everything in my power to get them not to target them. And they would target them with every attack and kill them instantly. Like And it was just like, oh, okay, well, if she makes it to the next round, she can heal herself and then not die. And then they would summon more enemies from the sky to drop pianos on her like it's Looney Tunes. Like, it was impossible to keep my healers alive for any period of time in the game. And I do feel like it is intentional in that sense.
Yeah, I never had that problem with healers, but like, I feel like I don't know how programming AI works at all, but it does feel like there's something in how it works that will make it like latch on to certain things. Like because there were certain characters where it felt like even after like they were like leveled up and like there was enough torchlight, it's at max, they would like, it felt like they would miss all the time. And it's like, the AI just like, or like just the programming of the game just decided that this character can't hit anything. And like, no matter how high of a level he gets to, he still doesn't hit anything. For some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. The character that I had that was the highest level, which was 2.5. I started a team into the boss of the manor, the one to kill the necromancer, the apprentice necromancer, and had to abandon the quest. But he got a little bit of experience from it. And that was the last quest that he ever got to do because he got hysterical blindness, which makes him miss. It makes his accuracy like halved whenever he's at 50% or less health. It was a man at arms, so he was just always at 50% or less health, and he couldn't hit anything anymore. Like, he just didn't hit an attack for a whole fight. And I said, we have to go home. And so we packed our shit and left. And then he had to go to the sanitarium to fix the hysterical blindness. And then he had to go stress relieve, which he also had to wait because the fucking caretaker was in the prayer room and he had God-fearing, and therefore I couldn't do anything else with him. And then that's what led to like the multiple turns of not, like, weeks of not being able to use that guy. So it was like a whole thing. But I do think it is just like, for some reason, yeah, you do miss a lot for sure.
Randomly, I remembered that thing that I was going to say earlier. So I think you said the thing, you had a hard time like with the stress mechanic. It was like the first thing you said when we started on this new tangent. And like, there's a character called the Jester, I think, is like the character class that can cast like stress relief on the whole party, and also like cast buffs and stuff. I feel like that should have been that character should have been part of the initial 4 that you get when you start the game, instead of like, I don't know, the Plague Doctor or something. Because like having a character that like is able to do that is like something that like I didn't imagine the game would have, and that's like, I think it makes him like the best character class in the game, because like other characters can like do like a little bit of stress healing to themselves to the point where like it's like basically useless. But yeah, like having a character that can like do it to the whole party and consistently, and like, it's just something I think should have been on Front Street. Like, it advertises like a thing that you can do.
Yeah. There's also an item you can buy called laudanum that says like I read the description and interpreted it as being like a stress reduction thing, but I was never able to use it. Like, I never had an opportunity to use it. So you can't just use it to reduce somebody's stress. Like, maybe use it in battle to lower the amount of stress they get per thing. I don't know. I only tried it near the end. But I do want to clarify, I don't have a problem with the stress mechanic in dungeons. I have a problem with needing to take time off from the characters.
Right.
Due to the things that happen as a result of the stress.
Right.
I wish that it cleared.
Right. Yeah. No, I bring it up just because of that. Once again, that tips video I watched was like talking about how usually in combat the back two characters of the enemy party are like stress dealers. So like you want to build your party to like kill them first. And then he was like, oh, if you're playing well, like you should be able to mitigate a lot of stress buildup and not have to send your characters to the bar or the church in between runs. And so you shouldn't waste upgrade materials on upgrading those buildings. Like you should put it into the caravan and the blacksmith. And I was like, that's like not at all like my experience. Like it seemed impossible not to have your character's stress meter go all the way up every time they go into a dungeon. Which like once again, I think like it's because if you know the jester character exists and is good, you prioritize getting him early and then are actually able to play that way.
Yeah, I had one jester and he did not have that skill.
Yeah, I think you have to go to the guild and like switch it in or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's random what 4 skills they get when they start, and then you can go to the guild to unlock them and swap out skills later for money if you have a character you like. But I just didn't know that the skill existed because I had the jester once. I took them in and then they died. So my stress relief plan was I ran 2 bounty hunters and just pulled everybody to the front because they have a grappling hook that will just like drag people, which I found to be, in my opinion, the bounty hunter was the best class in the game. And the man at arms, where those were my 2 like go-tos that I felt like actually did anything.
Right.
Because the idea that you could go through and this, like, I mean, this exposes just like how novice we are at this game, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
But the idea that you
60 hours.
Yeah. The idea that you could take a character and run a dungeon, have them survive, and then come back and then just run another dungeon with them is insane to me. Because like once you hit the first breakpoint, if they get a negative trait, your run is over in that dungeon, right? Like they are now an active detriment to your party as opposed to helpful at all. And so like if you go in with like 20 stress, like the extremely low amount of stress, but from the beginning, you're just going to hit that breakpoint earlier. And like, yeah, you could roll lucky and get and have them roll a positive trait. But I don't know, man. That doesn't seem that likely to me from my experience of playing the game.
Yeah, I feel like technically that's true. But like for me, I found like the debuffs or like effects of those like negative traits were easy to ignore. Because like I would like even sometimes go back to the town and forget to even cure them. And then next time I took them back out, they'd still have those debuffs.
No, not those.
Oh,
like
okay.
not the negative quirks, because there are a lot of them that are easy to ignore. The traits like abusive, that you get mid dungeon, and then every turn they will just yell insults at your team and increase their stress. Right. That is the thing that like is a run killer to me.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I like that conceptually. I like that there are 2 breakpoints for each character, and that there's a coin flip in there to like maybe you actually get a positive thing when their resolve is tested. But it's just the fact that then I have to come back and put them in a square and have them sit there, and then I have to run like a burner run to like hopefully get a few crests or whatever.
Right.
It felt the game at a point felt more like an incremental game, like Cookie Clicker, than it did like an active RPG where I was just like, I'm just sending these people in to like loot boxes to get stuff and then pull them out so that I can then use my actual characters.
Yeah. I'd like to hear like somebody who really likes this game's opinion on this, because like. Yeah, I feel like there's no reason for it to be as long as it is. like it feels like the game should be like a third the length it is like max. Cause like, yeah, like, I don't know, cause it on the like, cause I think it would take way too much grinding to actually beat it, and like a lot of that's going to be like pretty like tedious, just running dungeons, and there's only like 3 mission types and they're basically indistinguishable from each other. So I feel like you're going to be repeating a lot of content. Yeah, so I just wonder like if that is something that like people who like the game would have complaints with or not. Because on the other hand, I also kind of see how it has like almost sort of like a mobile game design style thing where like if you're into it, you know, you'd be like, oh, like I could just do one more run. Oh, I could just do one more. You know, like you would just keep playing it. So I don't know. Yeah, so maybe like people just get sucked in that way. I don't know. So yeah, I'd be interested in like what fans of the game think of its length.
Yeah, I feel like shorter game with a more robust end game. I say that not knowing what the end game of this game actually is. But if you can like just keep playing after you've beaten the game, I feel like there's no good reason to have the goalpost that far forward. Like, I want it to come back in. I want to be able to like play the game in a way that feels like I'm making meaningful progress. Because that is like, that's the secret. That's why roguelites took off and roguelikes have always been a really niche genre, is because they give you the feeling of progression. That's why people like them. And that's why I got into them also, though I do feel like nowadays I have more of an open mind to roguelikes as a concept. But like, this is solidly in that, like, you're trying to make permanent upgrades so that you don't have to spend as much time running low-level dungeons. And the treadmill is just too long or too slow. There's something going on there that feels fundamentally broken to me. So I do agree, like, make it a little bit faster. It just is, like, it's soul crushing to an extent. I don't know. But I also, I understand people wanting to spend more time in it, which is why I think having like endless and like goals like that go beyond beating the darkest dungeon also seems valid. But I think the game already has that. Like, cause there was like a tooltip that was like, if your character has run the darkest dungeon, they won't go back in. Meaning that after you beat the darkest dungeon, it doesn't just kick you out of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the way it works is there's like multiple missions within it. So if you take a party through one mission, you can't take any of those characters on the other 3. So you have to have 4 unique parties of level 6 characters to beat the game.
Holy shit. So it might actually just kick you out after you beat the darkest dungeon.
Yeah. And then I think the game just starts over after you've beaten it. Like, it just, like, does the classic loops back to the beginning sort of thing that I feel like was in vogue for, like, indie games to do around this time.
Yeah, that was kind of a moment for sure. Damn, that's rough. That's a lot of playing this game.
Yeah, but I think that like they added something in there, like the DLC or something like that, so you can just keep playing.
Oh yeah, because there is like, yeah, we should have maybe called this out at the beginning. I don't know if you had any DLCs installed, but I don't own any of the DLCs. I just have the base game.
I think I bought some sort of edition that has the DLC, but I didn't touch it.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know any of the DLC content. I don't know what it is or what it does. I know that I was strongly advised by multiple people not to use the Crimson Court, and so I didn't. And so I stand before you now ignorant of what the Crimson Court fucking is. I do want to talk about some of the stuff that I liked about the game.
All right.
Which I think coincide a lot with the things that I don't like about the game. I feel like everything that I don't like about the game is something that I do like that's just been dialed up way too much. Because I do like how close to the game's design ethos it sticks at all times. I feel like it is intentionally difficult. It is intentional that your characters can have random things that are bad happen to them, and your goal is to sort of mitigate the bad things that happen to your characters the best that you can, and making strategic decisions about like when to pull out and when to keep going. So in that vein, I really liked the extremely wide variety of like quirks and breakdowns and things that your characters can have and the different things that happen to them. What I don't like is that this made me extremely unwilling to engage with anything in the environment, because I felt like it was like a 10% chance that I get like $8 and a 90% chance to have the Black Plague. Like, those are the two options. And it felt very heavily weighted in favor of not interacting with curios most of the time. But I do like that there were a lot of things, and I never felt like I was always 100% prepared for what I would find. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. No, I agree pretty much 100%. Like, I think thematically is where this game is the strongest. I think they really knocked it out of the park with the concept. It is stressful. It is oppressive. It does feel hopeless. Doing well does feel like you're really beating the odds. It feels oppressive and challenging in all the ways it's supposed to. Even down to little things like just opening a treasure chest. No, it's thematically very strong, and they do stick to it in like all aspects of the game. And yeah, I agree. I think that's like the best part of it. But also agree that like I think it's overtuned for my liking.
Yeah, it does get very rough at times. I do also like, because I quit the game at a point where I felt like the climb back to a salvageable run would be too great, but I do like too great for me to have any fun doing. Well, I do like the fact that the game gives you the resources to essentially like just throw people into the grinder. It feels very callous, but like it does speak to the game's themes, and it makes the game's like difficulty a lot easier to stomach, knowing that like you can just go back out. Like there are other ways to make it through other than the way that you had planned. But once again, also a little bit overtuned. Felt like people were dying a lot. And that's it. Now we're done with the thing. I know. How did you feel about the sort of like aesthetic design? In terms of art style, the music, etc., stuff like that.
Yeah, I really like the presentation, actually. I really like the narrator. I think that's a really great choice. It's not the same, is in the same ballpark as this, but it's almost kind of like Crypt Keeper-esque. Like, I just think having like a pulpy narrator just fits well with like a horror themed thing, I guess. And I like the kind of like graphic novel, comic booky art style of it. Like I said up at the beginning, I think the strength of the character design might be one of the reasons this game caught on. Because I think like the knight, the crusader hero type, like, you know, looks similar to like a Dark Souls knight. You know, the armor design is really cool. Also, plague doctors are cool. People like those.
True that.
So yeah, I think the art style is really strong. I can't say I remember the music that strongly. So yeah, I feel like it just kind of like did its job. But narration and and art, I thought, were really good.
Yeah, I think there is a style of the reason I brought up music at all is because of this dumb comparison that I had, which was I feel like there is a style or a genre of music that is now just like inextricably tied to Lovecraft related media, because the music in this game sounds weirdly like the music in Dredge.
Oh, yeah. I can see
they're
that.
just like they're just like very similar sort of styles, almost like shanty like, but like more dour with heavier strings essentially. And I found that very amusing. I found myself enjoying it for the most part, and calling out the narrator there is a really good call. I know that the narrator himself has taken on sort of his own character in like indie game culture, with a lot of people using the sound bites for things on the internet these days. So very, very good, dude. Lots of great quips for sure.
Yeah, give them no
pulpy is the
quarter.
good word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kill them all.
Yeah.
He is like the sadder version of the Quake guy.
Yeah.
I need to I don't know if this dude has like a cameo, but I want the
he should.
narrator from this, to do like a monster kill, but just in a much sadder way.
Yeah. Before we get too far away from the music, random little thing here. I was just thinking earlier today, because I heard in some YouTube video the world theme to Halloween Town from Kingdom Hearts 2, specifically when you go into Christmas Town. And I was thinking about, like, man, Yoko Shimomura, like, knocking it out of the park again. Like, this song sounds so Christmassy, but with, like, an undercurrent of Halloween. Like, it sounds exactly like what it's supposed to. And I was thinking, like, oh, well, I guess, like, in our culture, like, we have very specific, like, instruments and music associated with both holidays, so actually probably wouldn't be that hard to mix them. And I feel like, weirdly, like Lovecraft has become, like, its own kind of style, I think, in a similar way. Like, there are, like, instruments and keys and, you know, different, like, stylings that I think we associate with cosmic horror, so...
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm doing a Lovecraft thing. Fucking bring me the cellos, bring me the down tempo,
and the grand piano
music.
Yeah,
yeah, that kind of
Give me
stuff
something
is
that'll make
very...
a ship creaking sound effect.
That's so true, bestie. Yeah, I also, to now wrap back around in a full circle, to come back to the art, which is the first thing that you talked about, was I agree. I found this weird thing. So I really like the art style. I like the very like heavy lines, sort of like everything felt very defined in the game, which I liked. And especially when you get into some of the later biomes, I love like the squid people. They're super good. I love the whale with the big shield.
Just the big dead whale in the background.
Very moving,
yes.
Frankly.
Great
I
detail.
Loved it. I found that the characters were extremely weird to me, because when I was in the game, I feel like they sold it perfectly. When somebody was like, we're doomed, we will all die here, and I was like, this fucking guy, just calm down and do your job, you know? Like, I was in it, and I felt like they were selling me the emotion they needed to be selling me. But from the outside, when I look at the character designs, I feel like they're half chibi designs. Like, they're kind of squat and have big heads. And I'm like, I feel like they're almost designed to look cute from the outside, but I never felt that way when I was playing the game, which could be just a success in terms of how they sold the thematic elements of the game. Or maybe I'm overblowing the Hello Kitty-ness of their character designs.
Yeah, I guess I have two takes on that, because like I think I did say it kind of has mobile game-ish design, and I think this was like played by a lot of people on mobile. I feel like it was, at least in some part, like they considered the mobile version a lot while they were designing it. So the way the characters are proportioned could be to just like look better on a phone.
Right.
And also, I think that's just kind of like in the lineage of like RPGs. Like a lot of like old JRPGs, like the sprites are very squart and kind of cute almost. So it might just be kind of maybe even a subconscious thing, like a holdover from different influences. Like as somebody who's like interested in sprite art, like it is an interesting thing because like the sizes sprites are supposed to be can be kind of restrictive, and I guess you don't necessarily have to stick to that sort of stuff necessarily, but like I don't know, I think it does dictate the proportion sizes and has like affected the style of like what sprites look like. So I think there's a lot kind of tied up in that.
Yeah, there's a long storied history of RPG character design that goes, and I do like the way that they approached it as well in terms of like there are character archetypes and you can have multiples of any of those characters, and so they all share the same design, but you can just like click one button and change their color so that you can easily differentiate between them. Like that's a great sort of like user interface thing that makes it easier for both the player and also for them designing the characters. So there was like a lot of, it felt very functional, but also it felt very evocative. Like it really hit a sweet spot for me. So I did like it a good bit. I don't remember if we said anything that would make it easy to transition into talking about it, but I do want to talk about the combat in the game a bit.
Sure.
Oh, no, wait. I do remember what I was going to say, and then we can talk about the combat. Hell yeah. You fought a boss and beat one, in fact. I fought a boss, but it wasn't the goal. A boss just showed up and wiped my party. Like in the third room of a dungeon. I ran into the Collector and just was unprepared to deal with a guy who just spawns an infinite number of enemies and hangs out in the back line. And so he murdered me. But he mostly just looked like a regular enemy, but tall. Still a good design, but like not super weird. Did they do anything with like the boss that you fought that felt like it was a major departure in the way that like a lot of old RPGs would do with bosses?
Yes, I'm trying to remember. I fought the Necromancer, and I think it was a similar kind of mechanic where he would summon like what a Necromancer would do. He would summon skeletons, and he would keep pushing himself to the back of the line. So you had to like get to him to do damage, or have range people chip away at him. So yeah, that's the only boss I beat. I think I fought like a siren in the cove as well, but had to retreat from that one, and don't remember what her mechanic was.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was curious because I didn't ever intentionally go into a boss in the game.
I think they do all
I didn't know
mechanics to them though.
Yeah, kind of a bummer, I guess, that the Necromancer and the Collector sort of do the same thing, but the Collector was just like, it's funny because like I would make similar arguments as to why I don't like the Collector as somebody who played basically none of this game, and somebody who played over 100 hours of Elden Ring, as I would against Melania, because I'm like, there are elements of both of them that feel like they are designed would be fine, but then they added one more thing and it was too much. And for both of them, it's healing. The fact that the Collector can hang out in the back and you just have to constantly reapply status. That's how I was dealing with him anyway, with the party that I had. And then he just uses lifesteal and gains like 12 HP back. And I'm like, dope. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Made him like he was functionally. I don't think that there was a single thing I could have done in the party that I had to actually beat him. So oopsie on that one. But I do want to talk about the combat system. Because we have talked about, and I don't know how many of these things are things we did for the podcast, but about other turn-based games that I didn't like the combat in. And it was because those games gave me too much information. And I'm trying to come up with examples here other than Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is the one that like sticks out to me because it was an example of a game where when you go into a fight with someone, you know how much damage they're going to deal to your character if you choose to fight them, and what like your percentage chances are. Like everything is laid out in front of you, and you just have to make like a tactical decision as to whether making the attack is worth it. This game is like the opposite of that, where I felt like I had, other than like the list of resistances that they had against different statuses, I had no information on the enemy at what they were going to do, who they were targeting, like what, anything that I expect sort of in like a more tactical RPG, I was not getting here, which makes me like it more than those games, because the thing I hate about those is that I would lose because I was being lazy and I knew that. I would much rather lose because the game did some shit and killed me. And there was nothing I could have done about it because it makes me feel better about myself. But this game, man, did I feel like there were so many coin flips and die rolls happening all the time that I felt like I never knew what was going to happen. And it conversely made the combat feel less strategic because it was like this. Based on the 4 options I have, this is the thing that seems like it has the highest likelihood of success, but everything could go wrong between now and when I get to click that button.
Right. I think that's a good way to describe it. Because like I think the game really just has a old school, just turn-based combat system. I think all the die rolls piled on top are to make it seem like it isn't just that. And I think it is like successful in a lot of ways, but like it really is just like you hit them, they hit you. Your speed stat dictates your place in the turn order, and you can like affect that with like buffing and stunning and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the nuts and bolts of it are just like a classic turn-based system, I think. And like everything else that like makes it feel like has more depth is a random dice roll.
Yeah, I mean there is the positioning thing, which I do. Right.
God, that was I think the most annoying thing in the entire game. Probably not, but right now it feels like that's true. It's like with enemies that could just like at the beginning of the fight scramble your party order. Ooh. Yep.
The very first time that I had a quest where I had to camp, I was ambushed in the night, so it's fully dark. You don't have the light mechanic at all going on, and it scrambled my party. And I think I made it out with one character alive. So the game implied it was like, rest when you want, but like if you think you can go further, you can put, if you don't feel like you don't need the rest or whatever. I was like, okay, so the resting is just like it's gonna heal you up or whatever. So I do the rest, and then they're like, do the rest mechanics. Don't you know all about the rest skills? And I was like, I didn't know rest skills were in the game. Give me a fucking break, guys. This is my first time. And so I do the rest skills, and then the rest happens, and then I get ambushed, and it kills 3 of my party members immediately in this ambush. And I was like, Does that happen every time that you rest? Like, I had no way of knowing that I just like rolled badly.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing that happened, was it scrambled the party members. So like I was quite literally caught with my pants down where we were all just napping and then we got ambushed in the night. Scrambled and then scrambled.
Yeah.
Like eggs.
That's pretty rough.
The second time. Yeah.
I feel like
so I like avoided doing quests where I had to camp for the rest of. I think I did 2 in the whole thing after that.
Those were my least favorite because they're so long. I think like the longer you like, shorter dungeons are much better.
Yes.
Yeah, less chance to build up stress and all that. But for me, like I think the first 3 missions I did where I camped, I didn't get ambushed. And then, like, the next 3 after that, I did. And I was like, it made me feel like I had gotten, like, some kind of, like, negative quirk that made it more likely to happen, which I checked and I didn't. It's just that common of an occurrence. I just got lucky. And I think after that 3rd time I got ambushed in a row, I just didn't do any more camping quests after that.
They felt extremely bad.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Once again, really cool thematically. That's like a thing that can happen, but like, pretty rough. Especially like if it's one where you're doing like a boss, and then you get ambushed. Like you're like, oh, I'll rest up before the boss, and then you get fucking ambushed. Like, fuck me.
I guess I have to start the quest over from the beginning now. After I do a throwaway quest, because I have to put all of these people in the hospital now.
Right.
Yeah. I honestly, I brought up what I referred to as the Valheim incident, which is where I was very harsh on a game that was suggested by people. I do want to put this out there. I know, first of all, this was suggested by the same guy who suggested Valheim last year.
Whoops.
So I know he knows, and Fawn is the other person who suggested it, so I know he's going to be fine with whatever we say. But I do want to just like, as a general statement, if you suggest a game and we don't like the game, that's a great suggestion, because it means that we wouldn't have played it otherwise.
Yeah.
And so this is like a thing that I don't actively seek out, so it's good to be forced out of your comfort zone to take in new experiences. I have no regrets about playing the game, no matter what fucking shit I say. I do feel like this has a similar problem to Valheim. In that I felt like every setback, the thing that I lost the most of was just my time. Like, it really didn't respect my time at all. And some people want that in a game. Not disrespect specifically, but like they want a game that just takes a long time to get through, that you can really immerse yourself in and get into the nitty gritty of the mechanics and get good or grind a lot or whatever. And I generally don't. On the podcast, I super don't. So it was a real push and pull for me like that. And those setbacks were so extreme at times.
Yeah. No, that's a good call out. Like, I know to us, we know that the whole point of Fanbruary is to play stuff we wouldn't normally play. I don't know how clearly we communicate that to the audience. So good call out.
Yeah. Well, it's also not like a rule that I want to put in place, because if somebody
like,
just like really wants us to play a game, even if it's something we would play, I still want them to suggest it, I guess. It gauges interest. Sometimes we'll do it outside of the month. So I think there's like 3 games on the list that were like, we were already planning on doing that this year.
Right.
From this year. So I feel like I didn't play enough of this game to have more to say at this point.
I mean, I feel like we've hit everything major. Like, the only other thing I had that I missed a good organic opportunity to bring up, which is like dungeon navigation. There's certain mission types that are just explore 90% of rooms. And the dungeons are not laid out in such a way that like that's it all like fun. Like, you have to go like down one long branch and then just walk back through several rooms, and it'll just eat torches and, et cetera and so forth. In a way that I don't think leans into the themes so much. Like, I think it's just kind of like an oversight and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it is there's just an inherent difficulty in implementing time-based mechanics, where, because the torch is based on like how much distance you travel is how much it burns down. And so the game wants to make it the game doesn't want you to be at full torchlight all the time, because that is what makes combat more interesting. The fights get harder, you get better loot when the torch burns down, so they want you to be sort of dancing around that middle zone, ideally most of the time. But because of the way that it's implemented, the only way they have to make you run out of torches is to just make you walk through the same hallways multiple times.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what the better way of doing this is. I think that this is a problem a lot with RPGs, where because battles are like distinctly separate from traveling in turn-based games, because they have to be. One thing would be a nightmare if it wasn't different. It's like either you travel in a turn-based way, which sounds horrible, or you can fight turn-based. I don't even know how that would work. So it ends up in this situation where the dungeons themselves are just, they're a pop-up book. It's like, this is a background to look at while you wait in between fights. And there are things to interact with, but not really, they don't feel that meaningful. Mm-hmm. So I found dungeon design as a whole to be just another treadmill.
Right. Well,
that didn't really go anywhere.
I'm pretty sure they're just randomly generated, which is where a lot of the, I think, hiccups come from. Yeah, because my problem is just like, especially on the ones that where you have to explore 90% of the rooms, is it's like a branch, like it's like you got like everything spreads out. Like if you just made it more kind of like a pretzel, like make it so like if a path that goes off, it like loops back to the like a main hallway or something. So that like if you're trying to
make it like a Dark Souls too,
like make a figure 8 shape or something. Like if you have to go off on a path, it connects back to like a central hallway. At least in the ones where, your goal is to explore most of it, so you don't have to just walk back through a straight line of rooms.
Yeah, I found that because of things like that and just like a lot of sort of aimless meandering, with nothing to do in between, that the what felt like probably what the game started with was the clear all room fights missions. Those were the ones that felt the most natural, in the sense that like there was a clear endpoint that you knew that you were going toward, and like it felt like it had build and crescendo to it, whereas like explore 90% of rooms is like that but without the end, like just the end of it's cut off. And then like the ones where you had to do special things like collect stuff, or I mean, you already said it, all of the missions feel indistinguishable from each other. They're all just walk forward until everything that you needed to do has now fallen into your lap.
And like the just explore 90% of the dungeon ones can even just end in a boss fight, and it is just the exact same thing. You just had to tag all the rooms along the way.
Right. Yeah, and especially like I've read a lot of people don't understand how scouting works, which makes me think that I probably also don't know how scouting works. Mm-hmm. But to my understanding about how scouting works is that it is, unless you just kind of got lucky with your character traits, is such a low chance that you will get the scout. Like, it's pretty uncommon that you get it, for like whenever you enter a room, that it feels like there isn't really meaningful choice being made 70% of the time. You just click the next room and you walk to it. So yeah, it's like, that's what I mean when I say it's like a pop-up book. It's just like a background to look at while you go through a treadmill of things that you have to do to end the mission.
Right.
So there's even things they could have done there. Make the scouting more interesting, have the path branch, have it play more like Pyre, where you had like the map and like you were making meaningful choices about which direction you were going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. You could have like a path where like there's like a hole in the floor with like a beam across it. It's like if you go across that, the beam will break and you can't go back. It's like you have to like pick which path you go down or something.
These are all good decisions that were not made here. Though I guess it's this is, I don't know the history of Red Hook Studios, but I don't think that they were a prolific developer before this game came out.
I don't think so.
I would guess that this was their first game, not based on the quality of it, but because of the fact that I feel like I would have heard about it if they had previous games at this point. Mm-hmm. It's just it may have been too much to ask for, I think. So I do want to wrap up. I do want to bring something up that is just like a thing that I happen to notice, or happen to know about rather. And I talked about it very briefly on stream last week, with, one of the people who is in our Discord. And I had heard, and I think this was like a classic Mark Brown joint, Game Maker's Toolkit episode or something, where they were talking about this. That was like, in the beta version of this game, or maybe in like the 1.0 or an early access, whatever it was, they didn't have corpses. So because of the way that the positioning system works in this game, whenever you kill an enemy, if you don't kill them with a crit or with like poison or bleed, status effects get rid of the corpses. But if they die regular style, they leave a corpse behind that takes up a spot, and oftentimes means that you can't hit people who are behind it. Mm-hmm. And apparently there was like some controversy among players because the corpses made the game significantly harder. So my question is like, first, were you aware of this? And two, do you feel like the corpses... Did you like the corpses mechanic, or do you think it's another example of the game being tuned a little bit too harshly for your tastes?
I did not know about that. Yeah, I don't know anything about the history of this game. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't feel like the corpse mechanic was kind of interesting. Like, I don't think it really made the game harder. Like, unless you were taking a party of characters that can't hit the back two people, I think it's like an interesting little wrinkle to add in. So I actually think, yeah, the game would be less interesting without that. Yes, I agree. I don't have the context to know how much harder it makes the game versus not having them, so I can't say specifically like if I feel like it is. It does feel like just another thing that makes the game harder in a way, but I don't feel
this
like
was sort of
that much easier without it, though. But I don't know.
I mean, if anything, it mostly just like makes you think more about your party composition,
right? Because
you know that corpses are a thing, and like the Plague Doctor has a move that gets rid of all the corpses. So like, if you take him, maybe you could consider more frontline stuff. Like, there's a strategic element to it that I do like a lot. But that was sort of the gist of it. And I think something good to kind of go into final thoughts with is that I think it's a great example of like, I love that this game is so, we've talked before about games feeling like they were self-conscious, like they wanted to do things, but didn't want to get like too weird with it. I don't know, just like pull back on certain elements. We talked about it really recently on, Lorelei, because it felt like a change from the developer's previous game. And I love how confident this game is with its like mechanics, that it was like it just apparently the game was like ready for people to play, and then they were like, oh yeah, now we're adding this other wrinkle that you just have to think about at all times. And yeah, it's just, for me, I do feel like it is another thing that tunes the game a little bit too harshly, but I do think it lends itself to this game's sort of aesthetic and themes and its mechanical ethics for sure. Do we have Death's Door thoughts?
My Death's Door thoughts are, I can't remember what game I said this about. It's gonna bug me, but whatever. I'm gonna say it about this game too. It's like, I'm very much like a optimist, or like, I don't know what the right word is, but like, while I was playing this game, I didn't really find it annoying me, and I felt like I was enjoying my time with it well enough. But then when I sat down to make notes on it, they were all negative things. So I was like, oh man, I guess I actually liked this game less than it felt in the moment. Yeah, it's like, so I feel like it falls under that category of game I want to like, but don't really in practice. Yeah, I think the strongest thing about it is all the thematic stuff, as we kept saying throughout the episode. I think, yeah, its commitment to like being stressful, like, and all the mechanics kind of tying into like making you feel hopeless and powerless, and like you could just get sick and die at any second, or leaning into all that eldritch stuff. Like, what if this was something real people could go do? What kind of psychological toll would that have on them? That's an interesting idea, and I like the commitment to it. Yeah, I think the way it was executed, the way it was designed, as just isn't it for me. I just feel like, yeah, I think it's a little bit too unintuitive. Like, it's kind of hard to onboard onto. It's the kind of game that's going to drive, I think, most people to a tips video on YouTube. So I think maybe some more tutorializing, or like an easier early game could have benefited the game quite a bit. So yeah, I think everything's just kind of like not tuned right, or not quite designed in a way that like I find enjoyable or interesting. So yeah, just kind of a miss for me. But like, I don't know, there is something like kind of cool and likable about it at the same time.
Yeah. When I was describing this game, when I was talking to people about how there was this like cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing because this game came so highly recommended and so highly regarded in all of the spaces that I've been in, I described the game as being a nightmare game for masochists who hate themselves and are allergic to exciting gameplay. And that was hyperbole, obviously, and a joke. But I do think that it is a nightmare game for masochists in a way. But ultimately, I think it is mostly just kind of a bad fit for the format that we do. Because we don't have a lot of time to do it. To play the game, to like really feel it out, and it isn't a game that either of us had like spent a lot of time with before and then brought in, which is how like this is like if both of us did RimWorld the way that you did RimWorld,
yeah,
where we both came in completely fresh and just like didn't have the mechanics or the understanding of like what the game was about. And because we both did that, it's really difficult to sort of come up with a comprehensive line on this. So I do think that the game is very difficult. I do think that is the point. So that's a check in the success column as far as the development of this game goes. But I found it personally not up my alley. It had thematic elements that were up my alley, but gameplay, the difficulty level, the turn-based sort of elements of it, the dwindling resources and like having to manage all that stuff was just not something that I was in the mood to engage with. Even though I can envision a world where I could see myself liking this game a lot if I put in like a lot of time into it. But I don't think that would ever happen. I feel like this game would need to grab me a lot earlier to get there. So that's where I'm at with it. It seems like the kind of game that would be great for people who wanted a game to spend a lot of time with and also just already liked turn-based games. It was gonna be an uphill battle for me from the beginning. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Castlevania 64. If I'm not mistaken, a largely sort of not popular entry in the Castlevania series, which is, I think, what sort of attracted me to the suggestion.
Yeah. No, I don't know anything about it either. But I also don't think it has a good reputation. But yeah, it's something that like I think is interesting to think back on now with the success of things like Metroid Prime, and people always compare Dark Souls 1 to Metroidvania. So like I'm surprised they haven't tried to make a newer 3D like Metroidvania Castlevania game.
That's true. It has been. I mean, the Castlevania series is dead as long as Konami is dead. But at the same
they're
time,
back Silent Hill, so
that's true. Yeah, they have been doing more in the gaming space, but there was like a solid 10 years where we just like barely got anything in the Castlevania series. So, but yeah, I don't know. Something about it felt very appealing. So we're gonna be talking about that next time. And until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro, where you can find links to our YouTube channel, our Twitter account, our Discord server, where you can give us suggestions for next Fanbruary or just, I don't know, June. Seems like a good month. And, talk about the games that we've played. You can find our YouTube channel, which has all of our old episodes, including ones that we did on Valheim last February. Final Fantasy X, I know, is a fan favorite episode that we did on an RPG.
I always want to say like Vampire Survivors or something.
Yeah.
Feels like
it's kind of got a bit of an aesthetic overlap there.
Like have like a lot of people would like both games for some reason.
I mean, that's because the only person on the planet who doesn't like Vampire Survivors is you.
I like it. I think it's weird how much people love it.
That's fair. Yeah, it is genuinely. It is weird. You're not wrong. But fucking don't touch that like button because you might get fucking malaria or something.
Keep your filthy hands off the like button.
Keep your grubby mitts off the like button for fear of catching a horrible foodborne disease somehow.
Collect 3 bells to ring in the dungeon. And talk to the narrator in the comment section.
Perfect. And remember that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer in the comment section.
No, Death's Door thought.
I mean, I like that because it's like final,
right?
But like said like in a different way, you know,
confession or something.
It's like Dashboard Confessional.
Yeah, it's like Dashboard Confessional. It's like Paradise by the Dashboard Light.